Hello, everybody. Welcome to Stories with Mrs. Reed. We are on chapter 16 of our Wayside School Gets a Little Stranger. Chapter 16, Mr. Poop. Joy, Mauricia, and Jenny were playing jump rope out on the playground. School hadn't started yet. Mauricia and Jenny were twirling. Joy sang as she jumped. My mama wore pajamas to the grocery store. She smashed a bunch of eggs on the grocery floor. 1 dozen, 2 dozen, 4 dozen, 6. She dumped a bunch of jelly jars into the mix. Grape jelly, apricot, don't forget cherry, orange marmalade, and wild strawberry. A man walked by and fell in the glop. He slid next door to the barber shop. His icky, sticky body got covered in hair. He tore a hole in his under. Joy tripped over the rope. It wasn't her fault. Mauricia had suddenly stopped twirling. Hey, said Joy, what's the big idea? Look, said Mauricia. A very handsome stranger was walking toward them. The girls stared at him. Good morning, Mauricia, said the stranger. Jenny, Joy. How do you know my name? Mauricia asked nervously. She wasn't supposed to talk to strangers. I've known you a long time, said the stranger. I see you almost every day. Mauricia was beginning to feel scared. She looked around for Louis, the yard teacher, but didn't see him. I can scream real loud, she warned. Oh my gosh, said Jenny. It's Louis! Mauricia looked at the stranger. He did sort of look like Louis, except his hair was combed. His shirt was tucked in. He was wearing a tie, and there was skin between his nose and mouth. He had shaved off his mustache. That's Mr. Louis to you, said Louis. I'm a teacher, and I expect to be treated with respect. You want to play jump rope, Mr. Louis? Asked Mauricia. Louis was great at jump rope. He could even do it blindfolded. He was the one who taught Joy the song she was singing at the beginning of this story. No, thank you, Mauricia, said Louis. I don't play games. I'm an adult. But you're a yard teacher, said Jenny. No, I'm a professional playground supervisor, Louis corrected her. He walked away. Wow, whispered Mauricia. I never knew Louis was so handsome. Jenny patted her heart. I think I'm in love. I thought he looked kind of goofy, said Joy. Up in class, everyone was talking about the new Louis. He looks so weird without his mustache, said Calvin. He's handsome, said Bebe. He got mad at me for running across the blacktop, complained John. He made me go all the way back to the edge of the blacktop, then walk across it. And I had to call him Mr. Louis. I am very proud of Louis, said Mrs. Drizzle. He has always been a troublemaker, but I think he is trying to be good. We should all give him a chance. Joy stared at Mrs. Drizzle. It's your fault, she thought. You made him shave off his mustache. At recess, Louis refused to pass out the balls. I haven't washed them yet, he said. You're going to wash the balls? Asked Eric Bacon. They're filthy, said Louis, and they all have the wrong amount of air in them. I don't care, said Eric Fry. I do, said Louis. Before I can let you play with them, I have to clean them and pump them up with the precise amount of air as specified by Poops. Poops? Asked Eric Evans. The Professional Organization of Playground Supervisors, explained Louis. He showed them the Poops handbook. Well, what are we supposed to do? Asked Eric Fry. Just play and have fun, said Louis. But remember, stay off the grass. No running on the blacktop, no eating, and no excessive shouting. The three Erics walked away. What a booger brain, muttered Eric Bacon. Louis heard him. That's Mr. Booger Brain to you, young man, he said. The next day, when the kids tried to go outside for recess, they only made it down to the 4th floor. The stairs were completely jammed with other kids from lower classrooms. Hey, what's going on? Shouted Joy. Louis won't let anyone outside, somebody shouted back. He's painting the blacktop. But I have to go to the bathroom, yelled Stephen. Now he's gone too far, said Joy. Excuse me, out of my way. Sorry, coming through, she said as she squeezed in and out of kids, crawled through legs, climbed over heads, until she made her way to the door at the bottom of the stairs. Louis was slopping black paint across the blacktop. Joy could see him through the glass door. Next to him was a big bucket of paint. "Mr. Lewis!" she shouted so loud that even the kids back up on the fourth floor had to put their hands over their ears. He came to the door. "What are you doing?" Joy demanded. "The blacktop isn't black," explained Lewis. "It's gray. A blacktop is supposed to be black. It's right here on page 43 of the Poop's Handbook." He opened the book and showed page 43 to Joy. Joy grabbed the book and threw it out across the gray top. It landed plop in the bucket of black paint. All the kids behind her cheered. "You're the Poop," said Joy. Lewis's red face turned even redder. The place where his mustache used to be turned purple. "That's Mr. Poop to you," he said. Chapter 17. Why children decided they had to get rid of Mrs. Drizzle. Number 1, she was nice. "I made cookies for everyone this morning," Mrs. Drizzle announced. Everyone cheered. Number 2, she thought up ways to make learning interesting. "I made 5 dozen cookies," she said. "There are 12 cookies in a dozen. So who can tell me how many cookies I made?" Joe waved his arm back and forth. I know, he said. "Okay, Joe," said Mrs. Drizzle. "How many cookies did I make?" 5 dozen, Joe said proudly. Number 3, she was patient. "Yes, I made 5 dozen cookies," said Mrs. Drizzle. "I told you that. But how many cookies are there?" 5 dozen, said Joe. "But how many cookies are in 5 dozen?" "Huh?" asked Joe. "How much is 12 times 5? Asked Mrs. Drizzle. Just a second," said Joe. "Can I use a pencil and paper?" "Certainly," said Mrs. Drizzle. Joe took out a piece of paper and a pencil. He wrote the number 5 on the piece of paper, then tore it into 12 pieces. 60, he said. Nobody quite understood Joe's mathematical methods. Number 4, she was fair. "Yes, there are 60 cookies," she said, "and there are 28 children in the class. So how many cookies should each child get?" Phoebe raised her hand. 100, she said. "You can't have 100 cookies," said Mrs. Drizzle. "I only made 60. "Make some more," said Phoebe. "I made 60, said Mrs. Drizzle. "I'm not making any more." "Okay," Phoebe said with a sigh. "I'll take 60. "We have to divide them evenly," said Mrs. Drizzle. "How many cookies should each child get so that every child gets the same amount?" John raised his hand. "Everyone can have 2 cookies," he said, "and there will be 4 left over." "Can I have them?" said Phoebe. Allison raised her hand. "Everyone can have exactly 2 and 1/7 cookies," she said. "Very good, Allison," said Mrs. Drizzle. "And John, you were right too." She gave everyone exactly 2 and 1/7 cookies. "She was a good cook," is number 5. "Best cookies I ever had in my whole life," said Stephen. Everyone agreed. "I got the recipe from Miss Mush," said Mrs. Drizzle. "You did?" several kids said together. "I just added a pinch of this and a little of that," said Mrs. Drizzle. Number 6. She knew what a goozack was. "Jason, would you please open the door?" she said. Everyone gasped. "What's the matter?" she asked. "You said the D word," said Dana. "Door?" asked Mrs. Drizzle. Everyone gasped again. "You're supposed to call it a goozack," explained Dana. "Who said so?" asked Mrs. Drizzle. "Mr. Kidswater." "Well, Mr. Kidswater is a goozack," said Mrs. Drizzle. Yes, Mrs. Drizzle was smart. She was nice. She made learning interesting. She was patient and fair. She even could make Miss Mush's cookies taste good. But she made Louis shave off his mustache. And so she had to go. Chapter 18, The Blue Notebook. They had a plan. It all depended on Sherry. Everyone just hoped she wouldn't fall asleep first. Sherry often fell asleep in class. "Come on, Sherry," thought Dee Dee. "You can do it." Sherry looked out the window. The sky was full of big, fluffy clouds. She yawned. The clouds looked like giant pillows. Sherry imagined herself wrapped up in one of those clouds, soft and cozy. She pulled her blue and red overcoat snugly over her head. Her eyes closed. Then they opened wide. "What's that?" she shouted. Sherry? Asked Mrs. Drizzle. Look, shouted Sherry, pointing out the window. It's a Harry! Her long eyelashes stuck straight out. Mrs. Drizzle hurried to Sherry's desk. What is it? A spaceship, said Sherry, from outer space. On the other side of the room, Dee Dee dropped her pencil. She bent down to pick it up, then stayed down. Dee Dee was part of the plan, too. She had a dangerous mission. She had volunteered for it. She felt it was her duty, since she was the one who had brought Louis up to meet Mrs. Drizzle in the first place. You don't have to do it, Ron had told her. Mrs. Drizzle would have seen Louis sooner or later. No, I'll do it, Dee Dee had bravely replied. Now she crawled across the floor. Mrs. Drizzle looked out the window. Where? She asked. Wait, it went behind a cloud, said Sherry. What did it look like? Asked Mrs. Drizzle. Like a giant hamburger, said Sherry. But there was a zizzle stick hanging down from the bottom. Dee Dee crawled to the teacher's desk. She reached up and quietly opened the top drawer. She removed the blue notebook. Mrs. Drizzle stared out the window. What's a zizzle stick? She asked. I don't know, Sherry said very mysteriously. They don't have them here on Earth. Dee Dee crawled safely back to her seat. At recess, everyone crowded around Dee Dee as she went through the blue notebook. Louis once put a frog in Mrs. Drizzle's shoe, she said. Why wasn't her shoe on her foot? Asked Jenny. It doesn't say, said Dee Dee. There's a whole list of bad things Louis did, and he made it sound like Mrs. Drizzle picked on him for no reason. No wonder she put a trash can on his head, said Todd. What else did he do? Asked Eric Bacon, who was always looking for new ideas. But Dee Dee had already turned the page. There are other kids a lot worse than Louis, she said, flipping through the pages. What are you looking for? Asked Ron. I don't know yet, said Dee Dee, but I'll know it when I see it. She saw it. It was a note to Mrs. Drizzle from a girl named Jane Smith. Dee Dee read it aloud. Dear Lizard Face, guess what? I didn't do my homework again. Ha, ha, ha. And there's nothing you can do about it because you're too stupid and ugly. Ha, ha, ha. My family is moving away tomorrow, and you don't know where. Ha, ha, ha. Rub a monkey's tummy. By the time you get this letter, I'll be gone. Rub a monkey's tummy with your head. Love and kisses, Jane Smith. Everyone was shocked. How old is that letter? Asked Myron. Dee Dee checked the date, then did the math in her head. Jane Smith wrote it 26 years ago. And look, said Ron, reading over Dee Dee's shoulder. Jane didn't do her last 12 homework assignments. After recess, Sherry saw the UFO again, and Dee Dee returned the notebook to Mrs. Drizzle's desk. Now all they had to do was find Jane Smith. Chapter 19. Time Out. Ms. Zarbs taught the class on the 19th story. There is no 19th story, and there is no Ms. Zarbs. You already know all that. But how do you explain the cow in her classroom? Ms. Zarbs drew a triangle on the blackboard. A triangle has 3 sides, she said, then pointed to each side. 1, 2, 3. She drew a square. A square has 4 sides. 1, 2, 3, 4. She walked around the cow to the other side of the board. She drew a pentagon, a hexagon, and a perfect heptagon. A heptagon has 7 sides, she said. Miss Zarbs was very good at drawing shapes. When most people try to draw heptagons, there's always one side that sticks out funny. But Miss Zarbs' heptagon was perfect. Every side was the same length, and every angle the same degree. It was a great talent, but nobody appreciated her. Nobody appreciated anything she did. It was like they didn't know she was there. She counted the sides on the heptagon. 1, 2, 3, 4, moo, said the cow. Ms. Zarbs dropped her chalk. She glared at the cow. I hate this, she shouted. It was a brown cow with a white head. It's all right, Miss Zarbs, said Virginia, her best student. I'll get the chalk for you. No, said Miss Zarbs, leave it where it is. The cow made me drop the chalk. The cow should pick it up. Her students gaped at her. I will not continue, said Miss Zarbs, until that cow picks up the piece of chalk and draws an octagon on the board. She folded her arms across her chest, stared at the cow, and waited. Ray raised his hand. Yes, Ray, said Miss Arves, arms still folded across her chest. Uh, Cows can't pick up chalk, said Ray. Miss Arves sighed. I know, she said, and I can't teach with a cow in my classroom. No one had ever seen Miss Arves so upset. She usually had a pleasant disposition. It's okay, Miss Arves, said Virginia. I don't mind the cow. You get used to it after a while, said Ray. What cow? Asked Nick. Oh, that one. I forgot it was there. Miss Arves smiled. She knew her students were trying to make her feel better. Other classrooms have goldfish or hamsters, said Virginia. It's really no different. No, said Miss Arves. I won't have it. All my life I've tried to be accommodating. I've never been one to complain, and what has it gotten me? A cow. She shook her head. When I was a little girl, my friends never did what I wanted to do, she said. I always had to do whatever they wanted to do. And my teacher never called on me in class. She always called on the kids who just shouted out without raising their hands, even though she said she wouldn't. She'd say, I won't call on you if you don't raise your hand. But then she always did anyway. But I was a good girl. I never shouted out. And she always did things alphabetically, so I was always last, if there was time for me at all. My parents were too busy for me. They were always dressing up and going out to fancy parties. I had to tuck myself in at night and wish myself sweet dreams. She took a tissue out of her sleeve and wiped a tear from her eye. Still, I always tried to keep a smile on my face. Well, not anymore. The days of walk all over Miss Arves are finished. She threw open her classroom door. The squeaky wheel gets the grease. What are you going to do? Asked Virginia. I'm going out there, said Miss Arves, and I'm not coming back until I get some grease. She stepped outside. She decided she'd go right to the top. So she headed down the stairs to the principal's office. Joy and Marisha were coming up the stairs. Todd is uglier than stupid, said Marisha. You're crazy, said Joy. He's stupider than ugly. Ooh, teased Marisha. I'm going to tell Todd you think he's cute. Miss Arves stepped in front of them. What are you children doing out of class? She asked. I didn't say he was cute, said Joy. He's just not as ugly as he is stupid. That means you think he's handsome, said Marisha. Are you going to marry him? I asked you a question, said Miss Arves. Ugh, gross, said Joy. I'm a teacher, said Miss Arves. That means you are supposed to listen to me. Joy and Marisha walked right past her. Miss Arves sighed, then continued down to Mr. Kidswater's office. She took a deep breath to steady her nerves. She was about to knock, but then changed her mind and just marched right in. Hey, Kidswater, I want to talk to you. The principal was making a rubber band ball. Do you hear me? Asked Miss Arves. He opened his desk drawer and looked for some more rubber bands. If you don't answer me right now, said Miss Arves, I'm walking out the door and never coming back. Mr. K pressed the buzzer on his phone. Miss Knight, you need to order some more rubber bands. That's it, said Miss Arves. I'm leaving. Goodbye. I quit. She walked out of the school and took a deep breath of fresh air. Please don't go, said Miss Arves. Please don't go, Miss Arves, said a voice behind her. Startled, she turned around. We need you, said a bald-headed man. He was standing between two other men. Both had black mustaches, and one carried a black attaché case. The bald man didn't have a mustache. Can you see me? She asked. Yes, of course, said the bald man, and we appreciate all your hard work. You do? All three nodded very sincerely. Miss Arves was touched. I've been teaching for 30 years, she said, and nobody has ever said that before. Well, it's not easy being a teacher, said the bald man. I don't get any respect, said Miss Arves. People treat me like I'm a nobody. It's not easy being a teacher, said the man with the attaché case. You have to work long hours for very little money. I've never gotten paid, said Miss Arves, and this is the first time in 30 years I've ever left the building. It's not easy being a teacher, agreed the other man with the mustache. Even the book I'm reading to my class, said Miss Arves. The author makes fun of teachers. It's a tragedy, said the bald man. Then why do it? Asked Miss Arves. Why teach anymore? I could quit and nobody would care. The children need you, all three men said together. Miss Arves sighed. I like to teach. she said. I really do. I love the children. It's just... She stopped and wiped her eyes. The man with the attaché case opened it. He took out a handkerchief and handed it to Miss Zarves. Thank you, she said, blew her nose, then gave it back to him. He placed it back in his attaché case. Can you at least get the cow out of my classroom, she asked. The bald man smiled. I'll see what I can do, he said. Miss Zarves smiled as she slowly shook her head. Then she turned and walked back into the building. Chapter 20, Elevators. Mr. Kidswater's voice came over the loudspeaker. Good morning, boys and girls. There was the usual pause. I have a very important announcement, said Mr. K. Elevators have been installed in Wayside School. For a second, the kids on the 30th floor were too stunned to speak. Then everyone went crazy. Yahoo! Yelled Sherry. Hot diggity dog, shouted Damien. Everyone was yelling and jumping. Zippity-doo-dah, shouted Mrs. Drizzle. Cheers could be heard coming from every classroom at Wayside School. The higher the classroom, the louder the cheers. Now, before you all rush out and use the elevators, said Mr. Kidswater, I want to talk a little bit about elevator safety. I don't want the same kind of chaos that we have on the stairs every day. I don't know how many times I have to tell you, when you go up the stairs, stay to the right. When you come down the stairs, stay to the left. But still, everyone keeps bumping into each other. Well, that won't happen on the elevators. I have personally designed a very special safety system. There are 2 elevators. One is blue, one is red. When you want to go up, you take the blue elevator. When you want to go down, you take the red elevator. It's that simple. It can't go wrong. The blue one only goes up, and the red one only goes down. By the way, has anyone seen my coffee pot? And so, at last, Wayside School got elevators. A blue one and a red one. They each worked perfectly one time, and never could be used again. That is where we will stop today, and I will see you tomorrow to finish the rest of or not the rest, but some more chapters of our Wayside School Gets a Little Stranger. See you tomorrow.